these two beautiful traditions intertwine in these two holidays of Easter and Passover with some really important themes, namely the themes of redemption, of liberation, of freedom. And both traditions in their own way, through their stories and through the symbolisms, sort of show us what that freedom really is. How do we get there to the spiritual freedom anyway? We might not be dealing with the same types of persecution and freedom that the stories were representing, but we definitely can take wisdom and lessons from the places in ourselves where we're not yet free. And how do we have that liberation that the Passover story points us towards? Or how do we have that resurrection that the Christian story points us towards? Remember, these stories, there's many ways to read them, and we could read them as historical facts, but when we stop at just reading any of our spiritual stories only from the standpoint of history, we miss actually the deeper reason for the story in terms of how can it transform us? How can it change us? Easter actually in the Christian tradition started last night. And the most holy sort of service of the year for the Christians is actually the Easter Vigil service. And I know many of you grew up in that tradition, so you've probably attended many vigils. And maybe some of you even attended some last night online. What I love about the Easter Vigil is that it starts off this holiday, which is about the light, ultimately. It starts off this holiday in the dark, in the cold, in the middle of the night. For many churches, they start right at midnight. So I love us to think about that as we celebrate today, that the holiday of light begins in darkness. And why I think that's so important is because, even in thinking about offering this service today, I noticed my mind was thinking, wow, we're in a really dark place right now. How are we going to find the hope? How are we going to find the inspiration that Easter promises? It's sort of like, and those of you that grew up Christian will relate to this, prior to Easter, most of the Christians have been in Lent, which is the 40 days sort of leading up to this holiday. And that's a time in the tradition where we try to do, so to speak, what Jesus did. We go into the desert, we go into our own inner desert, we let go of the non-essentials, the things in our life that distract us on our spiritual journey, and we really look within. That's kind of, to sum it up quickly, what Lent is about. It's this period of fasting, meaning weeding out the non-essential, weeding out the non-important, and focusing on that one relationship inside that is the most important. And Lent is also about looking at all the ways our ego, our belief systems, our own righteousness, all the sort of, to borrow a Buddhist term, all the sort of unskillful ways we show up in the world with our families, with our friends at times. Lent is a really powerful opportunity to kind of face ourselves. And so for 40 days, the whole tradition, the whole Christian tradition has been in this period of darkness, if you will. We've been in the desert. And today, Easter is like the celebration, right? Lent is over, the resurrection has happened, and many of us growing up Catholic probably gave up things for Lent, like chocolate or TV. So today we get to have our piece of chocolate or watch TV again or drink that glass of champagne, and the celebration starts. And the irony right now in this world we're living in, you could say, is that Lent is still very much going on. We are still, to a big degree, in the desert. Not in the same way Christ was in the desert, but we are because of our isolation, because of this virus and all of the death and fear and grief that this situation is bringing up, all of us isolated in our homes, depending on the country you live in, you know, we may still very much feel like we're in the desert. Where is Easter? Um, and that is precisely why I love the Easter Vigil, which happens in the darkness of night. It's this profound message that even in this dark place, many of us find ourselves right now, that there is still light, and that we can always, no matter how dark it is around us, no matter how dark it is inside us, we can always make a choice to light that Easter candle. They call it the Easter fire. So another opportunity that this day, that this holiday offers to us is the opportunity of renewal, the opportunity of recommitting ourselves to our own spiritual journey, whatever that is for each of us. I was reminded last night as I participated in the Easter Vigil online that at every Easter Vigil, there's a time for people to sort of reaffirm the vows that they took at baptism, which is probably pretty important since most of us were baptized as newborns. We don't even know what those vows are. But I purport that all of us today, whether we're Christian or not, can renew and reaffirm our own spiritual vows, that very much in the same way that when we go to weddings and we witness a couple being married and declaring love, that we as a couple can recommit. I know that's probably happened to many of you attending a wedding. You can recommit to your own vow of union in your own marriage. Well, Easter in a way is a time to recommit to your own vow with God, and whatever God means for you, whether that's if you're part of a faith, whether God for you is your connection to this great Mother Earth, or whether God for you is a deeper knowing of truth and of love in your heart, whatever that relationship is for you to the sacred. Today's an opportunity to see what you want to vow, see what you want to put a stake in the ground for in that relationship with spirit. So I want to invite us to hear the words of Rumi, who talked a little bit about what this ritual is about. Rumi is, I think most of you know, one of the greatest Sufi mystics. And here's what he said about making vows. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, it doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you've broken your vows 1,000 times, come, come, yet again, come. God is always waiting. Presence is always present. It's up to us to recommit, to show up, to renew our relationship with that presence. And so this ritual now is an opportunity for you to feel into your heart, what is a sacred vow that I either want to recommit to today or maybe make for the first time in my relationship to spirit, in my relationship to my own spiritual path, my own growth. For some of you, maybe in my relationship with God. What is that promise? A vow is different than an intention. I know many of you who've done workshops with me, we worked a lot with intention. A vow is not an intention. You know, we don't stand up at the wedding altar and say, I intend, you know, to love this person. We say, I will love this person. I will take this person forever as my husband, as my wife. So a vow is a promise. And so just for a moment, if you have a journal or you want to just close your eyes and reflect on that question, what would be for you in this moment something that's true in your heart that feels like a commitment or a promise that you'd like to make in your most sacred relationship? Hopefully help you sort of see this Easter resurrection, if you will, which again, the way I'm fashioning that, understanding that for us today is the resurrection really of the best part of ourselves. It's interesting that in this moment of probably the greatest tragedy that we will ever face in our generation and our society, in this um, darkness and despair and fear and suffering and grief, is also rising the most beautiful elements of our humanity. And I'm sure you've seen that in your own ways, that people are resurrecting pretty profound levels of love, of generosity, of heroism right now. It's almost as if, in some strange way, the tragedy has shaken us loose from whatever has held us back from being who we're meant to be, being who we're called to be on this earth, being the best version of ourselves. And there's so many people activating those gifts and giving of their own gifts, giving of their own resources, their creativity, their money, their time. It's pretty awe-inspiring. And that doesn't take away any of the real difficulty that we may find ourselves in. That doesn't take away any of the despair that we may be feeling. But for me, it holds it. It places it in a much bigger context, that that's not the only thing going on. You know, you turn on the news and the only thing going on is death and this virus. That is going on, and that's very real and painful to all of our hearts. And there's something else going on too, which gives great hope. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. That is what this day is about. Ultimately, that is the resounding hymn of Easter, celebrating our life, celebrating the light within us, celebrating the fact that we all, in any given moment of any day, can literally resurrect as our best self and be that light for others.